I've said on more than one occasion that my litmus test is Medicare for all. I am a single issue voter, as people say, even though I'm not a single issue voter. I have other red lines, one person, but that is my issue. Die on the flag, placing that vote. If there was anybody to vote for Medicare for all in the middle of an alien invasion, well, that's where I'm at with that. Because I find it to be unconscionable, even immoral, unethical even, for the party that is supposed to represent the interests of the left in the middle of a pandemic, where you have 88% of Democrats backing it, 70% of the public, and they don't push it. And you don't have lefties stand up screaming for it. Show a man the back door long enough, that lefty will get used to it, and that lefty will walk to the back door, even when that lefty gets 88% approval. Utterly astonishing. How? How does your party justify not accepting that policy if it would organically bring the party together and ensure a landslide against the man they're calling the apocalypse? Because the truth of the matter is, if Biden came out and said, this is what I'm backing, people will listen and come to him. Now, that's assuming people believe him. But it would have to be a coordinated thing of Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden. And in order to do that, you can't get that in the political space. There is nothing there. There's no momentum. There's no energy in the political space to do that. But fact of the matter is, you're in luck. There are more powers at your disposal than just the political space. You just need a multitude of people to come together and say, yes, I want this policy. And realize that if 88% of Democrats back it and 70% of the general public backs it, then that is a majority for you to say, you don't get our vote until you represent our interests. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We shouldn't even have to make this argument. And we will have a conversation about it later that we had to make this argument. But you will lose. And you keep telling us that that man is the apocalypse. So how do you justify losing to a man that you call the apocalypse, the end of all things, the doom bringer? How do you justify that? As opposed to appropriating a policy that has 88% support. How do you justify that? That should be the argument that everybody that is for Medicare for all should have made the moment that Sanders fell out that race. In fact, you should have been making that argument before that. Understand what I mean here. You have a lot of people who agree with this. And you have so many people that agree with this that it is incapable for one of the political parties to win without it. Even if African Americans by themselves said it, who also back the policy, especially the youth. For the number of blacks that have been disproportionately affected by this virus, and for King of Blacks, Joe Biden, to not back Medicare for all, you have what, 6-7 million people infected or something? Disproportionately. Who do you think lacks health care? Who do you think lacks economic capability in that situation? You already know. I don't even have to tell you. And yet, you can't get King of Blacks, Joe Biden, to do that. Bob Ramirez, they know you have nowhere to go. Game over. But that's just it, Bob. That's propaganda. You do have somewhere to go. You have the capability of saying you will lose without our support. Now, here's the problem. Donald Trump is an ogre. Donald Trump is a maniac. And because Donald Trump is an ogre, people look at him and they are terrified. And so the very common sense thing that, oh, wait, we do have these votes. We do have enough people to do this. We can force what we want on the political space. Mind-blowing. And never comes up. How does that never come up? That is real politics. That is leverage impinging upon the political space to force a party to do what the public demands that party do. And for whatever reason, it never occurs to lefties. Over the last 40 years, like I said, you could be forgiven for not accepting that position. But the moment you get to 2020 and you have so much support, you have so many people coming to those stadiums, you have so many people engaged. Even if you lose, why leave those people in the lurch? Even if you have told the Democratic Party, yes, I'll back you, you can still look to the 30 million people and say, look, I'll back you, but I don't know about them. Those 30 million people want health care. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You can still make the same argument. But the difference is you're recognizing that your strength and that your power was never entirely in the political space. It was out there. You're populist, right? Popular. Crowd. There are multiple dimensions to which you interact in politics. Voting is only one. Protests is only one. Leverage is the card you're looking for, especially from the standpoint of the left. Pop reality, thanks, man. Especially from the standpoint of the left. Sanders is still trying to get Biden elected. And he will be going from place to place to place to place, trying to get Joe Biden elected. If you're bringing out Sanders, you're basically trying to throw a fishing line lefties. Sheepdog those lefties into the party. That's your objective, right? That's your goal. That's what you want to do. You're company man, Bernie Sanders. And it's sad to see him do this, honestly, because a position of strength would have been far better than taking a position of weakness, especially in this year, and especially if you want to get Biden elected. The reality of it is, if you would have taken that position, the Democratic Party would have had to justify tanking it to a man that they keep calling the apocalypse. You must realize the threat of Donald Trump, the hysteria of what he might be, works also from the standpoint of not just cutting against you, of you have nowhere else to go and, oh my God, you're going to tank it. It also cuts against them. The argument works two ways. You only accept it in one way. Is the Democratic Party going to not appropriate these policies and lose to a maniac? The catch becomes, though, that it only works when you have a large contingent of people that can make that argument. Blacks vote to the tune of 90%, and yet blacks have no power in the political space because blacks vote in a cowardly way, if I'm being bluntly honest. Same thing for lefties. Despite your numbers, you have no power in the political space. Isn't that weird? Does it have anything to do with cowardice? Does it have anything to do with them being willing to tank it and you not? Which means you always get the back seat. And like Bob said, you have nowhere else to go. Until you get over that, nothing changes. Until you decide that, no, that politician's job is to get my vote. And you decide that to the tune of all the people who agree with a particular policy. Nothing changes. That's the point where your world gets different. That's the point where the politicians realize there is accountability in the political process. It's not about getting Trump in office. The whole point of it is holding your political leader accountable. And if your political leader, Democratic Party, middle of a pandemic, 88% Democrats back it, 70% of the rest of the public backs it, and they're willing to say, no, Nancy Pelosi, yeah, no, for Medicare for all. Chuck Schumer, no, for Medicare for all. And Joe Biden, no, for Medicare for all. Then why? Why? They're not looking out for you. Then why should you give two shits about them? And I understand people are going to say, but Trump. But you must understand that your weight, your gravity in the political space has been usurped based on cowardice. And at some point, you're going to have to assert your leverage in the space. You lost in 2016 anyway. Meaning Sanders in that race, when he was pushing for Medicare for all in these policies and everything else and bringing a huge amount of enthusiasm, if Hillary Clinton would have appropriated those policies, Hillary Clinton would be in office right now. Nobody from the establishment was going to leave Hillary Clinton. She could have appropriated those policies, one or two, and it would have been enough to bring people on. Medicare for all was my litmus test back then too. She would have gotten my vote. I ended up voting for Jill Stein because proudly, actually, and still proud of that vote. I guess the point I'm making here is it's a choice not to appropriate those policies. It's a choice to just say, I'm just going to push for this and I'm going to go back to status quo. That's a choice. And it's a choice where he's saying, I don't care what any of you lefties think. Yes, I'm going to walk Republicans on across the stage in the DNC. Yes, it's going to be okay if they take swipes at AOC. I'm going to do those things because I can do those things. Because I know I have a cowardly bunch that's captured. I'm making the point that the cowardly thing is the weakness. That's the reason why you don't compel any power in the political space. Cowardice. I don't know what else to tell you. If you were willing to let him lose, and if they understood you were willing to let him lose, your influence immediately grows tenfold. It's not an exact measurement, but it's the point where it's understood that I have to take them seriously because they are a serious contingent, and if I want to win, I need them. That's different than they're desperate. They're desperate, they're coming to me. I'm making the point that's an inversion of politics, and that is something we need to utterly destroy and get away from. It has damaged and ruined us. From Bernie's standpoint, Sanders wants Joe Biden in office. Yes, I would have wished he pushed them and pushed them in a way where Biden appropriated the policies, and not just him, millions of others, where Biden understood by under threat as opposed to under weakness, and appropriate him and get that support organically, not weakness stuff. Sanders wants his supporters to back Biden. Sanders has put out kind of these warning shots of saying, hey, you're not really appropriating any of my stuff. Sanders had to already know that Biden wasn't going to appropriate his stuff, which makes this a little hollow to me, to be honest. I don't understand why Sanders thought that Biden was going to appropriate anything when Sanders comes to him with no leverage. No nothing. You have nothing. You lost. You gave me your support whole hog right off the bat. You're going to be marching down these stages whole hog for bat. I can pee in your cereal and you watch me do it and you eat it and you'll still vote for me. That's where you are. So why do I give you anything? Whether it's a task force or whether it's some promise that I made back in the primaries. At this point, it's me versus Trump. Any promise that I made will be forgotten by most people, and they're going to judge me by Trump, not by what they should be judging me, which is by what the American public needs. Sanders' last sad whisper of a bombshell gets dropped on Jimmy Kimmel. Now, the person says, who's in the tweet thing, makes the point that says this was unprovoked. It was just kind of came out. Now, Sanders, as his role in the Senate Subcommittee on Primary Health and Retirement Security. Now, Sanders made the point. The subcommittee chairman and Senator Michael Enzi from Wyoming, Republican, and the ranking member is Senator Bernard Sanders, Vermont. Now, Sanders came out and said this on Jimmy Kimmel. Now, keep in mind, he's already the ranking member. I mean, so if the Democrats take it, this happens anyway. So I don't think this is anything that was offered, meaning the situation hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. I just want to make that clear, even though this is what he's saying is probably true.
Of course, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Pharmaceutical industry is a bunch of crooks. But all that Trump has done is come up with some bogus executive orders that will do absolutely nothing. He does not have the guts to take on the pharmaceutical industry, something that if the Democrats gain control of the United States Senate, which I hope very much happens, I'm going to be chairman of the Subcommittee on Health. Trust me, we will take on those crooks in the pharmaceutical industry.
Speaking of
chairman on the Subcommittee of Health. Now, that's a pretty decent perch. Especially if you had a Congress with a president that would be okay with Medicare for all, which we already heard he would veto. We've heard Nancy Pelosi say, I'm a capitalist. And we know that she is against that in measure probably more than she's against the Republicans. And Schumer, Wall Street Schumer, just laugh. I guess my point is, what's the practical use? What's the practical purpose? Yes, you will be able to do things in that perch. Agreed. But it's so diminutive from the standpoint of Medicare for all. And in regards to what I strongly suspect could have been gained in 2020, even if you lost, That's my point. The level of politics that needed to be played needed to go beyond just the blunt political space. And people needed to understand that there is something to do with intervening into politics through leverage. Yet all of these people protesting, but what's the point of a protest if you're still going to willing to vote for the person? Meaning, for all the bitching, for all the hammering, for, oh, they're taking advantage of us, oh, I'm being exploited, etc., etc. For all of those people who are protesting and still come back and say, yeah, I'm still going to vote Democratic Party. What does your protesting matter if at the end of the day, you're still complicit in allowing that system to prosper? Every lefty that's tried to minimize harm, understand what you've done. You've basically allowed homelessness. You've allowed poverty. You've allowed evictions. Your ability to affect the political space by acquiescing and accepting all of these years have to some degree co-signed this stuff. By the time we got to 2020, this was the moment where we had the opportunity to do something different. And unfortunately, we didn't do it. You get 88% of Democrats backing a policy that just a few years ago would have been unheard of. And the response is still to do exactly what you did 8 years ago. I understand it's Obama, so you're not going to necessarily, more than 8 years ago, but you get my point. You're not going to primary Obama or anything like that. And if Obama runs, for the most part, if you're Sanders, you may allow that to take place. But when it gets to 2016 and 2020, and you start getting a thing where you see a pattern developing where the public itself demands, is on board for your policies, then at that point, it's no longer about us. It becomes a thing about the public itself. And it's the public itself making that explicit demand for that policy. Even if you don't do 10, 3, tip of the spear, top ones that the public wants, and stand there and scream at the height of your lungs that this is what the public wants and we're not going to budge until you give it to us. And again, are you really going to tank it to a man that you call walking midnight, the end of it all, as opposed to appropriating these policies? And if they do, what does that mean? Meaning, what does it mean to be in a representative government if that government is entirely and perfectly willing to take it instead of appropriating policies of the public, especially in a time of a crisis? Hell, multiple crises. I'll leave it. I feel him. Don't misunderstand me. I get what he wants. But we have a fundamental disagreement in how to get it. And it's very possible that Sanders may say, look, I get what you're saying, but the Democratic Party would tank it in lieu of those policies entirely in order to prevent the precedent of them acquiescing to public policy. And that's a whole nother thing. Meaning, are you living in a representative government or full representative government? Is it real or is it a mirage? Is it just the thing, played on the wall? Or is there a reality to it from the standpoint of view with influence? And I'm making the point that power concedes nothing without a demand. And it is a clear demand that millions of people in the midst of a pandemic, I can't believe you even have to make this argument. In a rational society, you would. But all of those people that's backing the one specific thing, there was a potential for organization there, even if it was under the umbrella of policy. Just like civil rights, very specific. Suffrage, very specific. And I'm making the argument that healthcare, maybe it needs to be very specific and not within the context of a party, but outside, where it could be fought and argued in a scorched earth fashion where the objective and the only objective is getting that policy accomplished. Maybe that's what needs to take place. And I think that's the thing that was lacking this year when everybody basically at the end of it just put their heads down and put their asses up. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.